And it goes open to the public at 7.
I'm wondering if now. That's the thing today with, you just put on the next minute, you're talking and it's being recorded. You know? And in the background, even that hasn't started, you know.
I go on mute and turn off your camera. It says, don't Barney, please go on mute and turn off camera.
Hey, Chantel, how you doing? I can't hear you. Let's, something seems to be wrong with your sound. No, still can't hear you. You're not on mute, but there seems to be no microphone.
Now?
Now I can hear you. That's fantastic.
Great. Let me get Gary and Selwyn Nathan for you, and we can just see if we can get them all on the screen, okay?
Okay, that's fantastic. And in the interim, I'm going to see if I can change their name myself.
Can you hear me, Howie?
I can indeed. How are you?
Very well, and you?
Good, thank you. Where in the world are you? Are you in the searing hot Joburg?
Yeah, I'm in Santon.
Okay, so Barney, the two things that we have to do is you're not in the center of the picture, you're on the side. And the second thing is you have bright light behind you.
Okay,
so
all right.
We either have to pull that blind down.
How's that?
No, much worse.
Okay.
So our problem isn't the light in front of you, our problem is the light behind you. So your camera adjusts to make you dark because it sees the light behind you.
How's that? Can you come closer? Okay, well, let me sit that side. Hold on, we're going to move me.
Okay.
Bring the book. Take the video. Okay. Hold on.
So Chantel, while you're wandering around there, why don't you take a seat in each of those chairs and let's see if we can see you.
Yeah, because these guys are still having a fat conversation. Okay.
Okay. So that one's okay. Oh no. Yeah, that one's okay. But we now need to move that other chair much closer to where you are because we have to. Okay. Do you want to swap over the?
Yeah, I'm going to. Okay, so I'm going to tell them not to move these chairs. This fine?
Do you want to move? Yeah, that's fine, providing they don't move.
Yeah.
Is this better, Howie?
Okay, that's better lighting wise, but now we need to move the camera. You're looking down into the computer. We need to move the computer, whatever you're using, eye level with you, so you're staring straight at the camera rather than us looking up your nose.
My friend Mark Kramer here with me helping. Hold on.
I saw Mark Kramer wandering around without much clothes on earlier when your camera was still on. So I hope Mark has put on some clothing since last he did that. Okay, so Mark needs to go get some books or something in his house to move the computer higher because you're still looking down.
Hold on. We'll find something. Hold on.
Pick that up. Put it. Sit down and see.
Better.
No. You're closer, but you're not higher. Look at my picture as opposed to your picture. So get some more books, something. We want to raise the camera. You're currently we're staring up your nostrils, which are lovely nostrils, but that's not what we want to see.
Okay. All right, I've got two more books now. Yeah.
No, look at your picture. You can see your picture and you can see my picture. What you want to do is you want to replicate exactly my picture.
So now come down. Is it not too high now?
It's the wrong angle, but it's still not eye level with you. I would need you to be eye level with the camera. And it's too close. I can't see your neck. I can't see the top of your body.
what we're going to do here.
So first of all, it's probably too close to you, but look at the angle, Barney. Look at the angle. Just look at the picture of yourself on the screen. Can you see yourself on the screen?
We go further back and
Put
put
it down,
those
put it
books.
down.
Yeah. No, I'm going to put. I need some more books. The angle's not good. Better, yeah.
You're getting there, but the camera should still be higher. And once again, there's light behind you. The problem is, I don't want to see any light behind you. The camera sees the light and makes you darker because you see the windows behind you?
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to avoid. I want a wall behind you, no light behind you.
Yeah. Move it that way, then. Sit there in that chair. The other chair.
This one, on the mirror. Yeah.
Move it down.
All right.
Turn it down.
Okay, but just be careful. I can see windows behind you. I want to not see any windows behind you ever. Okay, now get the heart right.
You want me to go higher? The iPad higher?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Barney, how have you done 100 of these already and I'm still giving you lessons?
I haven't really done 100. I've done a few.
No?
How's that?
Okay, that's perfect. Just now, I want you to be in the middle of the screen. Currently, you're not in the middle of the screen. You're okay. Okay. Much better.
Right.
Fantastic.
I just spoke to, all right. Gary's not on yet, huh?
No, you can see that Gary and Selwyn's chairs are sitting next to each other as they walk down the passage. It's like the walk of shame for arriving late.
Okay, great. So how we are you going to start everything off, then I'll introduce Gary, all right?
Yeah.
That's good, eh?
I start everything off. I introduce all of you, and then I'll hand over. But already we have over 500 people watching. So,
Selwyn, you want a cup of coffee?
No, it's
look, Selwyn wants a whiskey.
Who's this?
What do you mean? Who's this? Gary.
Hello. This is Gary Player.
You're spending the rest of the night with me, Gary. So hi, I'm Howard. When last I saw you, you were on Plet Beach in a Speedo.
But you look like Mr. Universe yourself.
Tell me that. That's only because I'm not wearing my Speedo. You can't see what's below here.
Haven't you got any stuff to put in here?
Some sugar?
Yeah, please.
So
How are you
Chantel,
guys
just before Chantel goes to get you sugar, I just want the two of you to be as close as possible together because you're going to be on the screen, the same scene.
Any closer would be sitting on each other's lap. How do we get the volume?
Okay, Chantel, can you adjust the volume for them, please?
Hold on, wait a second.
Now tell me something, Howard. How is the clarity? It's
So
average.
So no, it's actually looking fairly good. But I just need to make sure that Chantel's going to push your chairs together, that we can see both of you at the same time. At the moment, I'm seeing half of Selwyn, and he's too good looking to only see half.
How is that?
Yeah, except Selwyn's like being pushed over to the side. So Gary, a little towards, I think it will be your right-hand side, just a tiny little. Okay, and
all
then
right.
Perfect, you're looking good. And then Selwyn, sit up, show us your fantastic posture.
The problem is a bit hard because then you're not going to see my head.
I can see the okay, that looks fantastic.
Okay.
Cool.
Gary,
We are all set.
we're all set. Can you hear us? Are we loud enough on your side? So when
You're
Gary,
loud enough.
Very well. Very well.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Bonds.
Hello, Nate.
so Gary, I want to know before we're starting, and we're starting in about 8 minutes, but there are already hundreds and hundreds of people watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Zoom. Your horse yesterday, second.
Dave the King.
Well, I was second. I'm sorry to have to answer this in a roundabout way, but I won more tournaments than any man that's alive today in the world. Okay. But I had a lot of seconds. So I learned and I was second in the Masters 3 times. Now let me tell you, that's torture. So I was used to finishing second a lot. But yesterday was the worst second I've ever had in my life. The horse is running for 5 million first prize. Biggest race ever in South Africa. The horse, unfortunately, you get a draw. We had the worst draw. If we have a reasonable draw, we win it. It lost by exactly that much. If it has a good draw, we win. And this is a very, very good horse. It's never been ridden really properly. And yesterday we had one of the world's champion jockeys. This guy came out here and rode and won 3 races and second on ours. It really was actually a great show up for our jockeys to have to pull finger. I mean, it just showed you the class.
How much do you win for second place?
1 million.
More than he won in his first 20 years of his career.
But, you know, I usually I'm going to win a tournament to break even with all my family.
What's the how big is your family? How many grandkids and great grandkids now?
22 grandchildren, 4 great grandchildren, 2 wives, 1 in America, 1 here. I'm getting, you know, I'm becoming like one of these Arabs. You know, you have a lot of wives, but the bitches, you get a lot of mother-in-laws.
How do you keep track of all these grandchildren? In which countries are they? Are they all in South Africa?
They keep track of me. I've got 15 American grandchildren, 7 South African. We've got everything. We got Australian, we got American, we got South African, white and black, 2 black grandchildren we adopted. We've got every damn national. Italian. Oh, the Italians have got no neck. They like the Jews, you know, they talk with their hands and their neck. So anything I don't have is a good Jewish boy. So I said to them, please, you know, the big fat wedding. He must marry a good Greek boy. I said, you got to marry a good Yiddish boy. Never happened.
Well, you know, it looks like you've got a lot of Jewish siblings, though.
I don't have all my friends are all Yiddish. I mean, I don't have a single Christian friend that I do have a couple. Yeah, I do.
So you notice I came in black also.
Well, you know, that's going to be one of my first questions about this all in black thing. Nate, I want to know, are you coming back from a funeral or do you just want to look like Gary?
No, you misunderstand. Ask Gary. Most of the time he wore black, because he only became a Black Knight later.
Yeah.
He had to wear black because he never had a big enough suitcase to carry more than 1 set of clothes.
And it was it was the Black Knight. Now when I play badly, it's the Good Night or Good Night.
So, Gary,
Listen, Howard,
yeah,
you got to ask Nate, why are you wearing black? Okay,
I'm
wearing black. And
I think he's wearing black because he was hoping to share in the 5 million rand first prize with Dave the King.
Howard, we're on in 5 minutes.
In fact, we're on in 4 minutes, but we're already being watched by hundreds and hundreds of people. So Steve Taylor says, can I say a quick hello from Israel? I know Gary Player, went with him a few times. It's Steve Taylor, Daryl Egdis's brother-in-law.
Well, Steve, I want to tell you something, my friend. I've been heartbroken what happened in the synagogue recently. It's just so tragic that we can't live in peace in this world. I mean, you know, if everybody is trying to develop a nuclear weapon, bombs, tanks, could we not take all that money and put it into the world where everybody can have a job and a home and happiness? What is the human being's a terrible animal, eh?
Terrible.
I mean, my heart went out to Netanyahu yesterday. I mean, to have to deal with that, I mean, it's terrible, eh? It's hard.
7 people murdered at prayer in a synagogue.
In a synagogue. Now, you know, Muslims and whatever religion you are, Yiddish, Christian, whatever you are, you know the one place you got to let people pray in peace. You can't kill people in churches. It's a disgrace.
Yeah.
So just to ask you, how are we going to do this? How are you going to lead the way? And Barney and
I'm going to lead the way. You just chill and give us good stories, because between the two of you, you have got buckets of good stories that are going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr.
How long have we got? We're going to knock
hour and a half.
We got an hour and a half or as long as we need. But Gary, wherever I go, since we announced this webinar, people are stopping me on the street. People who are at your wedding, people who catered for you in Israel, wherever I go, there just seems to be tens of thousands of people that know you and feel a connection to you.
I got messages on my phone today. I thought this is only for the Yiddish people. I mean, I got messages today. I couldn't believe people that are old people. Oh, so they're going to be listening. I couldn't believe it. A lady called Dorothea in Port Elizabeth. I was shocked. It's wonderful. But how come Barney hasn't even said hello? What's the matter with you?
Mr. Player, I'm trying to say hello. I can't get a word in here. Hello, Mr. P. How are you? Hello, Mr. Player.
I'm very well, thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nate Allen Ebdes says you were at Athlone, you were in matric together.
No, I wasn't. I had to leave school instead at 9 because my dad was in matric. I wasn't in matric.
But Gary, you'll see tonight, because people, you say, who's this for? And the truth is, our webinar that we did last week has been watched by 106,800 people. Only 22% were in South Africa. It was watched all over the world. And you'll see tonight, in a moment, I'm going to say to people, where in fact are you watching from? And people have already started posting. Rita says, hello from San Diego. Hedley says, hello from Dallas. Let's see, Elise is in Stanford, Connecticut. You will see that tonight you have an unbelievable audience, multicultural. We started this as a project of the South African Jewish Report, but everyone watches us. We're watched around the world in the United States and Canada and Australia. Last week, we had 20 people watching us from Mexico, 20 people watching us from Panama. We have people who watch us in the United Arab Emirates and in Thailand. It has become this unbelievable international community. And you'll see tonight what is so amazing is that everyone is part of the conversation. It's not just me and you and Nate and Barney having a discussion, but all the audience are going to contribute questions, and they feel like we've recreated a digital community. And during the period of COVID, when no one was leaving their homes and we were doing 3 of these a week, we really provided information and entertainment to people because they were just unable to leave their home. And that's really one of the great secrets to building a new community in the year 2023, a digital community where people feel very much part of it. And you'll see, if you see Lynn is watching from Israel, we've got Shalom from Stellenbosch, Foxy's in Toronto, Valerie's in Los Angeles, and she says, Gary, you look great.
Ask her if she's got a husband, will you? And tell her if she hasn't, to put me on her list. And if she has, give him poison mushrooms.
Look, today you give people magic mushrooms, not poison mushrooms. So, Gary, are you in the market?
I'm on the market as long as they're rich and they got a jet. I can talk.
Surely you got your own jets by now.
Howard, I learned a lot when I was a Canadian outage. I learned to use a Yiddish corp. You must understand that. You're talking about the experienced boy now.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
I'll tell you one thing. Yeah. We'll have a lot of laughs on this show. That I can tell you.
Okay, fantastic. Because the time has just gone, 7 p.m. South Africa time, but we're being watched right around the world. So wherever you are in the world, whether you're watching us on YouTube, on Zoom, or on Facebook, a huge welcome to everyone around the world. And it's such an honor and a privilege to have not only Gary Player on tonight, because Gary, you're an icon. Everyone knows who you are. Nate, I'm not sure everyone knows who you are, but you're probably one of the greatest raconteurs in South African history. And Barney Girnun, who knows more about sport than any other human being. It's such a great pleasure on behalf of the South African Jewish Report to welcome you all. Tonight is, in fact, the 145th webinar that we're running as part of this webinar series that we started at the beginning of COVID. And we've now been watched about 2.7 million times since we started this webinar series. Last week's webinar, J'accuse, was watched by 106,800 people around the world in obscure places around the world, but it really resonated with people. And Gary, tonight when I was talking to people, and I was saying, in terms of the most recognized South Africans, we probably have Nelson Mandela, and then maybe you.
Can you see us? We can't see you.
I can see you. Has
No, we can't
Chantel
see.
has Chantel run away? You're definitely still on the screen.
We can see you.
Word of you guys, anyway.
Okay, how about this, Nate? You go find Chantel. I'm going to welcome everyone and remind everyone that these webinar series are brought to you by the South African Jewish Report, and the latest edition of the South African Jewish Report is out. It's a free service to everyone. So go pick up your copy of the Jewish Report. You can get it at CNA or Exclusive Books or Checkers or Spar or Pick and Pay or Dischem or Woolworths or your garage shop, your butchery. We distribute it free of charge in about 242 locations around the country. And there's an amazing story on this week's edition of the Jewish Report on the front page. And that was a big court case between Chabad South Africa and some of its previous donors. So, Sel, you're not on mute. We can still hear you and see you.
Okay.
But so
Chantel's coming.
Okay, Chantel is on her way, but go pick up a copy of the South African Jewish Report at wherever you normally pick us up. But if you can't get a hard copy, don't forget that you can go to sajr.co.za. That's our online edition. You can either download the entire edition, or alternatively, if you don't want to download the entire edition, you can look at each of the individual articles. So, Danny, I'm not quite sure why we've got a black line across the top of your screen. And so I'm not quite sure why we can't actually see it, but let's just give everyone the webinar, the address again. It's sajr.co.za. You can go and download the entire edition. We were saying just in terms of our webinars that on that very link as well, you'll be able to see all of our past webinars as well as on YouTube. So last week's webinar, unfortunately, we weren't able to keep on YouTube for copyright issues. We were only given permission to have JRQs up on the web for 1 week after our broadcast. But in that 1 week, 106,800 people watched that webinar. Really absolutely remarkable. And it's such a privilege to be able to bring these webinars to you. And the last thing, so many people are saying to us, well, we're not on the mailing list. We're not seeing the mailing list. Well, you can join one of our WhatsApp groups. So we've created a small bit.ly link. So if you've got a pen or piece of paper, we're going to give you a moment just to go to bit.ly, bit.ly/SAJR live. So let's just do that again. It's a website, bit.ly/SAJR live. And that will allow you to join the one of our WhatsApp groups and be notified about our webinars. Or alternatively, you can just take your camera, open up your phone to the camera, point it at that blue and green WhatsApp thing that you see on your screen right now. And if you do that, I'm glad to do that myself. If you do that now, you'll see it will open up a website. In fact, it takes you directly on to be able to join a WhatsApp group. And I see as I'm doing this, lots and lots of people are busy joining WhatsApp groups as we're doing it. So I'm going to leave that on the screen for another 30 seconds while we ask Gary and Nate, can you see us now? Are we back on your screen?
Yeah, you can. We can see you really good. You're very small, but we can see you.
Look, I'll grow. Thanks, Danny. Danny's on controls this evening. So if you want to join the conversation, don't forget you can post a comment on Zoom, or alternatively, if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, you can post a comment there as well. And Danny will bring all of those comments through to Zoom so we can ask Barney, Nate, and Gary any question that you have. So please join the conversation. It's not just between us, it's between everyone. Danny, let's get rid of that off the screen. And
there we go.
Welcome to some of the most amazing South Africans who we've gathered in one room together. Gary, I'm just looking at the figures between YouTube and Zoom and Facebook at the moment. We have thousands and thousands of people watching us already. So
great.
Before I hand over to Barney, because Barney is going to do an introduction of both Nate and Gary, before I hand over to you, let us go 20 years down the road. And maybe 30 years down the road. And someone is thinking, in the unlikely event, if you ever pass, they would have to put something on your tombstone. How would you like to be remembered? What's the one line that represents Gary Player?
You know, this is a question that's asked to me, I would say, every week of my life. What is your legacy, in other words? So I'd just like to make something very clear. When you ask me questions, I've got to answer sincerely, and I don't want to think people think I'm boasting. Otherwise, I can't answer it in a proper manner. I've won more golf tournaments than any man on the earth today. I'm the only man who won the Grand Slam on the regular tour and the senior tour. I was given the Medal of Freedom in America, which is the greatest by the American government, which is the greatest honor bestowed upon a man in the free world. I've had all the successes. I've won more Open championships. I've won more Open championships than Palmer, Tiger Woods, and Nicklaus put together. I've had a career that I've been so blessed, of which I go on my hands and knees every single day of my life, because a man is never so tall as when he's on his knees. But that's not my legacy. We as a company have raised 1.7 billion rand for people around the world, from China to India to Africa to America, around the world, in Britain. That is my legacy, because I was so poor as a young man, as a young boy growing up. I had a stomach full of empty. I had a pocket full of dreams. The only person standing behind me was my shadow on the ground. You understand? So I had a real struggle with my mother dying when I was 9. My father working on a gold mine, 8,000 feet, and making 100 pounds a month. My brother went to war at 17. My sister's at boarding school. I go to one of the greatest schools in the world. South Africa have the greatest high schools on the planet. And I went to King Edward's, took me an hour and a half to get there, an hour and a half back, came home to an empty house, nobody there, had to cook my own food, make my bed, and I lay in bed every night crying, wishing I was dead. And that's what made me a world champion. So I went through the suffering, maybe not as much to the degree as a lot of people that have been through wars, etc., etc. So it taught me the value of life, the value of friendship, the value of gratitude, the value of prayer. And so my legacy is to the rest of my life, which will be, I hope, a long time. And I hope I'll be able to raise a lot of money, because we're raising a fortune at the moment, to change people's lives, to give them a place in the sun that somebody is deprived of the normality that you and I experience in our lives. That's my legacy.
So Gary, before Barney begins, tell me about the man sitting next to you. Number one, why is he dressed like you? And number two, who on earth is that character sitting next to you?
You know, this man, let me tell you something. He's done one unbelievable job at the right time for our golf in South Africa. He has been a mediator. He's brought people together. When we, came out of the depths of apartheid, this man, what he's done in golf has been a miracle. I cannot tell you enough about my friend Selwyn. And what a golfer. Let me tell you something. I always said to him, I said, Selwyn, I played with a lot of golfers in my life. I've never seen a man with a better backswing that you have. He can really play. Now, he got a little shaky on the putts, we won't talk about that. But if he'd been a good putter, he would have been South African amateur champion without a question. But he's never mind about the golf. He's done so much for golf in this country and bringing people together. Everybody loves Selwyn.
So, Gary, a nice introduction, eh? Similar to what my wife Janice would say about me.
Nate, why are you wearing black?
Because if when you travel, you can't take a lot of clothes with you. So rather take something that doesn't look dirty.
So, Barney, who on earth are these people on our screen, and why did we invite them today?
Well, let me first start off by saying thank you. What a great privilege to be here and to have so many people watching from around the world. I've done many chats with the great Gary Player in my life, and I'll say it again, we're in the presence of greatness here. This is, without a doubt, South Africa's greatest ever sportsman, golf's greatest ever ambassador. And let's not forget, he told us a bit in the beginning, but he won 9 majors on the regular tour, 9 majors on the senior tour. And in America, they came up with a concept called the Big Three. And there were 2 Americans and 1 South African, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and our very, very own Gary Player. So what a privilege. We're going to ask some great questions tonight. He's done some amazing things in his life, which people might not know, and we're going to go there. And then sitting next to him is another legend of South African golf, and that's Selwyn Nathan, who's a great friend of mine, a great friend of many, many people, who's done an amazing job in taking this sunshine tour of ours to where it is today. And that slogan, that greatness begins here, is very, very true, because the Sunshine Tour produces great players that start here and end up at all corners of the world. And Selwyn, and now Thomas Abt, but originally Selwyn and Johanna Rupert and people like that have made this tour the amazing tour that it is today. There's some great stories that Nate can tell us. I'm just going to start with my first question for Gary, and that is, he is so famous that in the early 60s, when he won his first major, when he won his first Masters, he got a telex from Elvis Presley. Can we hear about that, please?
Well, I go on. I think the show, if I'm not mistaken, you know, you're talking about a long time ago. You're talking about 70 years ago, plus minus. And I'm talking to this lady, and she says, now listen, what do you like besides golf and horses? I said, well, give me your guitar there. So I grab the guitar and I say, you can do anything, but don't step on my blue suede shoes. And I'm moving my legs like Elvis did, because I loved Elvis Presley. I was going to say an email. Can you imagine? Or a WhatsApp. I get a telegram. Listen, King, I want you to come and meet me down. I'm doing a movie called Hawaii and LA. Are you coming down? I was on my way actually to LA the next week. I said, I'm coming down there, and I met him, and I walked into where he was doing the movie Hawaii. As I walked in the room, I had a tie and a jacket on. We were the same age exactly. He says, cut. He goes in the room, puts a jacket on, it comes out, and he says, how do you do, sir, in that Tennessee accent? And he says, I want to play golf. He takes his jacket off. He grips a club, looked like a cow giving birth to a roll of barbed wire. It was so bad. His hands were like this, or he's born on a Harley Davidson motorcycle. We get his grip right, and he says, now what's important? I said, Elvis, you've got to learn to wind your hips up and unwind your hips. He says, the hips? I said, yes. He says, baby, you talking to the right man. And he goes, shoop, 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 with his hips, you know, he moved them back and forth. Cha-cha-cha. I said, man, you've got it. And he was such a nice man. I wish we had space on the camera to show you how he moved his hips. But he was such a nice man.
Stand up. Show us your hips.
Well, watch this. He stood there like this, you see? And he went like this. He went. I don't know if you can see that. But, you know, the tragedy, you know, there's always a good and a bad. The man dies at 52. You take Whitney Houston, you take Barry White, you take Prince, you take Jackson. I mean, so many of these great people that can contribute to life. And even if you go in another sense, Muhammad Ali, who was such an influenced man in the world today, because he didn't die from drugs. He died from being hit in the head by those big guys. You can imagine being hit by those massive guys. You know, you can't stay normal. It's too tough. But this is the message we've got to get to the youth, because the youth of a nation are the trustees of posterity. We've got to get through to them that your body is the greatest gift bestowed upon you in life. But do you know, Howard? 2% of the world worry about their body. That's the sad thing. They eat crap, they drink, they smoke, they don't exercise, they don't laugh enough. And these kids are taking drugs today like it's going out of style.
Look at this body.
You're talking about a rare case. Really, it's very sad for me. My big thing I'm always talking about. Health is the greatest gift bestowed upon man or woman, but it's the most, people worry about the stock market. They worry about how much money they're making. They don't realize that your health is the most important thing, and the least is done about it. I find it very, very frustrating, quite honestly.
So Gary, I want to actually ask you about health in a second, but Gary mentioned youth, and I want to talk about, Gary, your youth, because let's start at the beginning. How did it all begin? What were you like at school? You know, what made you pick up that first golf club? And what did your teachers at school say to you when they discovered that you were spending a lot of time on the greens?
Well, my father started me. He said, come out and play. I got colors for rugby and cricket and soccer at school. And my father said, come and play golf. I said, no, that's a sissy's game, not for me, Dad. And I reluctantly went out and played with him. And I had 3 pars that day, and I had a lot of 7s and 8s and 9s. But the bug got me. And thank goodness. I mean, what would I have done without golf? I would have ended up being a school teacher, which I would love to have done. I would have been a farmer without money, but I would have worked on a farm. which I would have enjoyed. You don't have to have a job necessary that makes money. But I mean, you know, things in life, I have a great belief. I'm very religious. When I say very religious, I never go to bed without saying a prayer. I say a word of thanks. In my life, gratitude is the big thing. You see, when you've been through the mill, gratitude is a very significant word. Gratitude and love. And so, you know, I play a golf course today. Before I tee off, I say, thank you for letting me be on the golf course. Because there in Israel, we had these people, 14 people killed in a synagogue. There's something every day. America, they shoot somebody almost every week. It's a tragedy. So when you think of the things that are happening in the world today, don't you think we should be saying thank you? If you're blessed, if you're in the 1% of the world, where you're born, you just so happen to be born in a certain place. So, you know, life is great, and you have a choice to be happy or sad, well or not well. My dream is to live to 100, because I love people. I work as hard now as well, almost as hard now at 87 as I did when I was a young man. I just went to 5 countries in 10 days for Rolex. I then went to the father-son tournament in America, came back. So I love golf, and I can't tell you what golf has done for me. It's enabled me to travel more miles than any human being that's ever lived. What a game. I mean, if I tell young people, play golf, it's the only sport I know of that's play and stay. Every other sport, rugby, cricket, tennis, is play and away. You know, and it can help you in your life. You learn something it's a university degree. You learn something every day in all different aspects of life.
Tell us what you scored today.
Well, I've beaten my age now 3,061 times in a row. And I told Trevino that, and he said, what's so good about that? You got to shoot 15 over par to beat your age. But it's an accomplishment, because I go to if you want to live a long time, you must remember, luck is the residue of design. And the things that I do to live a long time, I try and have 2 meals a day. I exercise. I read a lot for my mind. I laugh a lot. I've got unmeasured love in my heart. And these are the things that will teach you and help you to live a long time. Because life, I come back without being repetitive, is the greatest gift bestowed upon man or woman.
So just to ask you, 3,062 times.
In a row.
Yeah. And how
So
many people...
Gary, what did you score today?
Howard,
listen,
Howard, hold on. Just check something out here. So he's saying that he beat his age 3,062 times in a row. And I'm sure that we've got a couple of thousand people on this podcast. And I promise you, if there's 1,500 golfers on this podcast, they've beaten Gary's age more than 3,062 times.
Howard, I just need to ask Nate a question.
Okay,
Nate,
before you ask Nate the question, I just want to know, Gary, what did you score today?
72, but I bogeyed the last 2 out of the last 3 holes because the wind was really whipping. When I stood on the practice tee, I was hitting full drivers into the wind, and the caddy was throwing the ball back at me.
Nate, I've got to ask Nate a question, Howard. Nate's got some great stories, but a lot of people won't know that in the 80s, Nate caddied at the Open Championship for Fulton Allen, and he was standing on the driving range. There's a famous photograph, and the late, great Sevi Ballesteros came up to you and said something, Nate. Can you tell us that story, please?
So actually it was on the first tee.
Okay.
Fulton was playing with Sevi. It was the first 2 rounds, and he said to me, "Hey, Nate, what are you doing here? And why are you caddying?" And I said to him, "Well, just for fun." The truth was that I'd lost a bet to Fulton that if he ever made a major championship, I would caddy the bag. And Sevi said to me, "For fun, he says, you should go to the beach."
Did Fulton make the cuts, Nate?
Yes, he made the cut. Sent me many times during the trip to go and get him a boerewors roll or a pie. The bag was filled up with, his mother used to fill it up with kibbe sandwiches every morning. It was quite an experience.
And Gary, I just want to ask Gary something else here. Gary, the mystical Mr. Ben Hogan, Mr. Hogan, you got a great story about the first time you played with him and what he said to you when you played with the great Ben Hogan. Maybe you can just tell us a bit about Ben Hogan.
First of all, I have no question in saying he had the greatest golf swing of any man that ever lived. I think he's the greatest golfer the world has ever seen. But unfortunately, now listen to this, in his prime, he went to the war for 5 years. Then he came back and he had a terrible automobile accident. So for 30 majors in his career, in his prime, basically, he never played, and he won 9 majors. But I played with him in my very first US Open in Oklahoma. And I went up on the tee, and I was very nervous, obviously, playing with this famous man. And I took my hat off, and I said, "Morning, sir." And he said, "Morning, fella." And then I played 36 holes with him. He said 5 words to me. I hit 2 irons, 2 foot from the hole. He never said a word. After the 36th hole, he said, "Well played, fella." So I told people this. They said, "Well, he was very talkative, you know. I've never heard him talk that much before." So, but then something very, very significant happened. I'm sitting in the locker room, and his back was to mine. And he tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and he always put his face like 5 inches from you. They called him the Hawk. And he said, "You're going to be a great player one day, fella." And I said, "Mr. Hogan, you'll never know what that means to me." And Nicholas loved this for a significant reason, because without boasting, this pair of hands hit more balls probably than any man that ever lived. Probably Hogan hit more than I did, but he's dead and I'm still hitting. So, you know, maybe I'll surpass him. And he turned around, he was always immaculately dressed. And he turned around, he said to me, "Fella, do you practice hard?" And I felt like saying, "Just as hard as you do, sir." And I just said, "Yes, sir." He put his jacket on, he said, "Double it," and he walked into the dining room. Double it.
Well, Gary, Josh Bernstein quotes this famous quote that I think everyone knows about you: "The harder you practice, the luckier you get." How did you come up with that?
You know, this is, if you want to have something that you've never had, you've got to do something that you've never done. And think about that. There's no shortcut to success. So many people today want instant relief, instant results. It doesn't happen. Even if you have a business that makes, I remember Johan Rupert saying, if you've got a business, you start making a profit too early, it's not a good thing. So there's no shortcut. The world has always been competitive. We like to think it's more competitive today. It's not really. It's always been extremely competitive. There's no shortcut. You've got to work your tail off. It just depends on how badly you want it. Now, there are dreamers and there are doers. And, you know, in the history of golf, there have only been 15 players in the history that have won 6 majors or more. You've got to win 6 majors to be at least a superstar. There are different categories, and everybody wins 2 or 3 majors, they call him a superstar. No, a superstar means a Michael Jordan, you know, a Muhammad Ali. You know, you've got to stand out. And so people are too easy to use the word greatness too loosely. But to young guys, you know, today when you think of the prize money and the opportunities in all sports, I mean, there's Messi being, as I understand, offered 350 million. On the Live Tour, they're offering guys 100 million, 200 million, etc. And the prize money today, if you really want to work hard, what an opportunity for a person. But how many people are really going to, they're distracted, they get girlfriends, you know, they go to the movies. You know, it's very interesting, this, I'm finding a lot of young people are drinking excessively now. And I find it very interesting why smoking is classified, no smoking allowed. I mean, it's the cancer of the world, which it literally is, but drinking does more harm. They beat their wives, you're not safe in cars, people lose their minds, you lose your nerve, but drinking is far more serious than cigarettes, but it's accepted. Well, the world is kind of strange when it comes to health and good living, isn't it?
So, Barney, why don't we just ask Gary to tell us a little bit about Sun City and Soul and
Gary, I want to go there.
building that.
So before we even do that, I want to go back to the beginning. Sorry, I mean, Gary, you told us your father puts a golf club in your hand, and I presume you're a good player and you're playing at Kalani. But how do you go from being a good player in South Africa to the international circuit? How do you make
Well,
that
now
jump?
that's a question that everybody asks every day. It's a little thing called it. Now, there's nobody on this planet at the moment that can define it. It's indefinable. I played with guys that when I played practice rounds, i.e. Tom Weiskopf was way better than me. He won 1 or 2 majors. He was better than Nicholas. You find people that can really play. I hear it all the time. Oh, you should see this guy play. He hits a ball 400 yards, 300 yards. They're not winning golf tournaments. It's something that is, to me, it's a gift bestowed upon you. I really believe it's a divine gift. People say to me, well, why have you got it and why others haven't got it? I said, well, you better ask him himself. Don't ask me. I can't answer that. I've got a friend who's one of the most highly intelligent people I've met in my life. He's very scientific. He reads all these scientific books. He says, you know, we never had Wi-Fi 20 years ago. And yet the world's been in existence for tens of thousands of years, but we only found out 20 years ago. He says there's Wi-Fi. He says there's Wi-Fi. There's certain human beings get more Wi-Fi than others. That's his explanation of it. I don't necessarily agree. Don't know sufficient about it. But everybody I played with that were champions, I'm talking about that won 6 majors or more. First of all, every one of them were irritable. Not one of them were calm. Now the psychiatrists say, oh, you've got to relax. It's only a game. My word, I said, your guys will never be champion. You only win by 1 shot over 4 days. Think about it. Now, golf is not like tennis. If I play you in tennis, the conditions are the same. To win Wimbledon, by the way, I'm so excited and I'd like to talk about this later. That Djokovic won the Australian Open today. I pulled for him harder than I've ever pulled for an athlete in my life, and I'll tell you why in a while. But tennis, you've got to win 6 games and you win Wimbledon. When you win a major in golf, you've got to beat 156 guys. And I don't care what day you play golf. If you play in the morning and the afternoon, they're different golf courses. So to win majors in golf is way more difficult than tennis. But it's called it. And I really think about it. I would say every day of my life, what is it? I lie in bed. How did I win all these tournaments? Traveling around the world. I'm small. I'm not playing at home. I'm playing in their territory. I'm missing my family. I'm missing my country. I'm missing my friends. How did I win all those tournaments? I don't know. It's a gift that's bestowed upon you. And one day they might, with what we're going with technology, they might be able to find something in the brain that explains what it is. But it's fascinating.
Right, and Howard, I'm going to now go back.
Time's up, and cut you open and
Too late.
take it out.
Gary,
I give it to you.
Gary, we're going to go back to one of your great legacies, Gary Blair Country Club, Sun City Golf Course, the $1 million, the start of that in the early 80s. Your great mate, the late, great Sol Kersner. Nate was involved in those days as well, as he always was. Tell us a bit about the start of Sun City, the building of that great golf course, and the beginning of that $1 million.
Well, Sol Kersner says to me, phones me up, says, I want you to come with me in a helicopter. I want to go out to Sun City. And we actually landed where the 18th green is now, and their cattle and barbed wire and cow poo and bush. And, you know, Selwyn was also there a few years after me there. And so anyway, Sol says, I'm going to have the biggest golf tournament in the world. I need your help. He says, I'm going to have the biggest boxing world championship. I'm going to have Shirley Bassey, Frank Sinatra, Robert Mitchum. And he goes through all these people. And there was a big piece of cow manure there. And I kicked it loose and I flung it over his head. I said, in America, they call that a meadow muffin. That's what you're talking. Well, let me tell you, Sol Kersner was a genius. And I use that very, very little in my life. He had an imagination, but he wasn't a dreamer. He was a doer, you see. And what he did, and you know what was sad for me? We had a football player in South Africa, and our team wasn't in the top 60 in the world. And he was a soccer player, and he died, and they gave him a state funeral. Sol Kersner, the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs that he created, and the money that he brought in with tourism. I could go on and on and on. He dies, nothing.
Do you remember
Sad.
that? Do you remember who was on the chopper with you?
Were you?
A.B. Siegel.
Oh, A.B. Siegel, sure. I mean, A.B.
So when Gary might have thrown a bit of the cow dung over Sol's head, but A.B., A.B. was one of our great tennis players and part of our crew. Also came from Dormfontein, hit balls up again. And he was a huge man, and he looked at Sol and he said, "Sol, would you be kind enough to tell us what you're smoking?
That's right.
To tell us such nonsense about what you're going to do?"
And everything he said was done. Then he says to me, go into, now this is, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. I think Singapore is the best run country in the world, however. Economically, per capita, they're probably the wealthiest and the best organized. But anyway, so Sol says, I said, Sol, look, if we're going to have this great golf course, we got to have the best caddies. So I go into that village up in the mountains there. Now, these young black kids had never seen a golf ball in their lives, okay? So we bring these guys out plus minus 20, and we start telling them how they're going to carry the bag and this and that. Well, to cut a long story short, there's a guy called Zach. So Zach excels, and I take him to the British Open with me, and we win it, the Senior British Open. But he does a book. He does a book that is the best I've ever seen. Isn't that interesting? We win the tournament. He comes back. Now he goes with Louis Oosthuizen and wins the British Open. Then he goes with Brandon Grace, and Brandon does very well. And now, yeah. So he must have 10 million, but he must have won 10 million rand as prize money minimum. I mean, it just shows you if you incentivize people in the world, what they can do. And that was Lee Kuan Yew's, one of his main theories, incentivize people. And that, so Sol Kerr, let me just, I want to tell you how it ended up. He came to Sun City and I was there. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
I made a big fuss of him, and he's in a wheelchair. So he goes up to the main hotel, and there are 1,000 of the black folk there who obviously loved him. And they sung 2 African songs. I cried like a baby. You know how those Africans, the beautiful way they sing. You can't get that anywhere in the world. And they sung their song from the bottom of their hearts for absolute gratitude to Sol Kerr.
Absolutely.
God bless you, Sol, wherever you are.
So,
Gary, one more
Barney,
question.
let's just ask some questions from the audience.
Okay, carry on.
So Clive wants to know, how did you get onto the international circuit without any sponsors? And Johnny Frankel says, do you remember when you played golf with his father, Rudy, who then asked you if you would be the spokesperson for Black Cat Peanut Butter and Jungle Oats, which were part of the Tiger Oats brand, which Rudy had started.
Exactly, and that's true. And I mean, they also had Vic Tawil with Jungle Oats, and he won the world title. He says at the end of the fight, I eat Jungle Oats and my brother also. You know, he meant to say my brother also eats it, so it sounded like he ate his brother. So that sold a lot of Jungle Oats.
Do you know that Eat Your Jungle Oats story with Gary was very famous, because I remember the SA Open at Mowbray, the one that Simon Hobdo one, was quite controversial at the time. But there was a tree that used to overhang the first tee on Mowbray. And, you know, to get a view of what you did, if you were game enough, you could climb up the tree. And this young colored guy had climbed up into the tree overlooking the first tee. And Gary walked out of the clubhouse and down through the tunnel of people to get on the first tee. And this colored guy shouted, just the most perfect colored chip, "Hey, Gary, eat your Jungle Oats."
Yes.
And the place absolutely exploded. It was brilliant.
Well, you know, those sponsors meant so much in those days to get going. You know, my father was poor. I was making £30 a month. But I'll tell you, at Kalani, I made £30 a month with David Black as an assistant. I made £30 a month from the ladies who I gave lessons to, gave me a tip of 50 cents. Of course, now you're talking about 60 years ago, 50 cents was, you know, like 20 rand today. And then Mo Cohen, he'd wake me up every Friday night. I lived at Kalani. Get your jammers off, come into the snooker room. And I made £40 a month walking around the snooker table on my hands twice. And everybody put £1 in. I made £40 a month there, 30 tipping and 30 from my boss, David Black.
Amazing.
Who was the guy that asked you about how much money you're making? And
Oh, no, that was Ginger Snyder. So Ginger Snyder sees me. He goes to work. He was an early bird. He sees me every morning in the bunker at 6 o'clock. He comes home from work. He'd like to go to the club for a drink. He sees me practicing. He says, no, wait a minute. I've never seen a man work like this. He says, Gary, how much are you making a month? I said, basically 30 pounds a month. He says, now look, I'm going to offer you 500,000 pounds. Now listen, guys, think about that 60 years ago. That is massive amount of money. He says, go and ask your father whether you should accept it or not. I said, I don't have to ask my father, Mr. Snyder. I'm not going to take that because I believe I'm going to be a world champion. And do you know, young boys say to me, 100 young boys come to me from around the world every year of my life. What have I got to be a champion? I said, I can't tell you. But I can tell you one thing. Hard work, but you've got to genuinely believe you're the best. Genuine believe, not tell yourself you're the best and you get on the first tee and you poop yourself. So that comes back to that little thing called it. And only 15 players in the history of golf have had it.
the guy that
Very true. One more
so
question.
many times.
Nate,
He asked you so many times how much you're making now when you became a senior. And
Oh, no, this is Oscar Fruman.
Ruben, yeah.
That's it. So Oscar Fruman, he had the biggest Jewish accent you've ever heard in your life. And he was my neighbor in Houghton. So I got very friendly with him. He loved golf and he was at Houghton. So I'm overseas and I phoned him periodically and I said, Oscar, how are you? And how's your wife? He says, compared met whom? So I started to laugh and he says, now, Gary, how much money are you playing for on the senior tour? I said, Oscar, we're playing for tens of millions of dollars. Marvelous, he says. Remember what I told you when you were a little boy at Killarney. Money's not the most important thing in the world, but I still put it up there with oxygen.
Howie, before we go to you, Mr. Player, the obvious question, which I've asked you before, and a lot of people want to know. I'm going to ask you who would hit the drive for your life, if your life depended on it. Who would hit the long iron? Who would hit the short iron, the bunker shot, and the putt? So we're going to start with who would drive a golf ball for your life?
Ben Hogan.
The long iron?
Jack Nicklaus.
The short iron?
Trevino.
The bunker shot?
Myself. Sorry,
who-
I said in the beginning of the show, don't think I'm boasting when I answer honestly.
That's right. But who would make the 10-foot putt?
Tiger Woods.
Well, that's coming from the great man himself. And a lot of people want to know about the magic of a man who came before you. Because the reason why South African golf is so great, there's always been great champions for people to look up to. There was a guy called Bobby Locke before you. He won 4 Opens almost consecutively. They kicked him out of America because he was too good. Tell us a bit about you and your relationship with the great Bobby Locke.
Bobby Locke was a marvelous golfer. And he had a marvelous temperament. And I'll never forget, just to give you an idea of his temperament, I played in Australia and I won the biggest tournament in Australia in 1956. First prize was £5,000. And I said to my wife, if I win the tournament, we'll get married. I won the tournament. Now Bobby Locke, he just won the British Open just prior to that. So now he lays a challenge to me. And he even meets me at the airport. Now, that's a hard thing for people to understand. And he meets me at the airport and we go and play 3 36-hole matches, okay? And it's the best of 3. The first match, he beats me at Benoni 2-1. We go to Germiston the next game and I'm 1 down with 2 to play. Doesn't look good. I birdie 17 and 18. There's a par 3 and I hit a 5-iron 6 inches from the hole. We tie. We go to Royal Durban. I beat him on the last hole, the 108th hole. Now that means he was basically starting to be dethroned. He took his hat off and he came up to me and he looked me in the eye and he said, well played. You know, he was a gentleman. He was a barman's nightmare. He'd always be the last to leave the bar with his guitar and the barman would say, his ukulele. So they'd say, Mr. Locke, I've got to go home. 1 more drink, master. 1 more drink, But let me tell you something. When you think of the equipment Think about the equipment. And the Americans are unfortunate. I adore America. They've been the Samaritan of the world. But they never, ever gave him his credit. Even today, when they rate the best players in the world, they don't put him in the top 60. I mean, it's just so ludicrous. This man, he never missed fairways. He played with rubbish, and he could really play. He was a...
And he could putt. And he could putt.
Oh, no, he was in the top best 5 putters that ever lived.
Yeah, that's a fact. Nate, you knew Bobby Locker, but didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I played with him quite a lot. I was lucky. I lived in Francis Street in an observatory, and I would go down in the early 60s. I would go down and get a chance to play 9 holes or 18 holes with him. I did travel. My late father was in the Air Force with him, and I think it was probably about 1970, or maybe a little earlier, 68 or 69, that he wanted to drive to Durban, and asked my dad whether I would, be his passenger. And I don't think it's ever taken anybody 15 hours to get to Durban, because he had a contract with, I think it was United Building Society. And every single town that we went, and I'm talking about, we left Johannesburg and first stop was Alberton. And we went to see the bank manager in Alberton. And by the time we got there, and he must have had, and like Gary said, that one thing about Bobby, definitely wasn't scared of alcohol. So my father didn't know that he'd put my life in Bobby's hand. So. But fortunately, we did get there safely, and I managed to have a practice round with him, and guess who won the tournament? This little chap here on my right. He was a most amazing man, and he had a theory that he would never shake your hand with his right hand.
Yeah.
He always used to put his left hand out,
right,
and shake your hand. And people used to ask him, why do you do that? And he says, well, you shake with the left and you take the check with the right.
Great story.
And he was smart, because people today, they come along and when you're playing in a tournament, and some people, have a hard, when I shake hands, I give a hard shake and I look him in the eye. But a lot of golfers have got soft hands. And if you get somebody who squeezes your hand, Miller Barber was put out of a tournament because some guy squeezed his hand so hard he had to withdraw the last round.
So if we could just ask you, Gary, I don't know whether it's urban legend or whether it's true, but there was a particular guy that was leading a South African Open when he used to play 36 holes. And he was leading by 5 or 6 shots. And he got on the tee with 36 to play. And he walked up to him and he said, good morning, Gary. And he looked him straight in the eye and said, we don't speak.
Right.
And guess who won the tournament by 5 or 6 shots? So it was like true grit. Gary told you we don't speak. I think that might have had a little bit of an effect on him for the rest of the day.
Well, you see, it's what I said. When you get in the ring and you boxing, or any sport, if you don't pay attention, look at Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali. You can take any sportsman. They were all so focused. You look at Djokovic. And I'd just like to say something about Djokovic today. You watched him playing today. He's so keyed up. And why I pull for Djokovic, he's the only athlete ever that has exercised and eaten equivalently. Now, there have been a lot of athletes that exercise profusely. And what's their diets? Tom Brady, myself, but nobody ever to the degree that Djokovic. And he's not allowed, they barred him from playing in America. They kicked him out of Australia.
Yeah.
Now, and I know that happened to me because I played golf in my life where they threw ice in my eyes. In America, I lost the PGA. They threw telephone books in my back. They charged me on the green. They threw balls between my legs. I know I won 10 majors here. I lost by 1 with all that going on. So Djokovic, he is the fittest guy in the world. When he went to play in the American Open, I know they have the COVID shots, but he is the healthiest man on the planet. Could they not say when he arrived in America, listen, you are getting off the plane, we're going to give you a test right now. If you're positive, you're getting back on the plane. If you're not, you can play. Because everybody, half the people in the stand didn't have COVID shots anyway. So this is the ironic thing. Medvedev is not allowed to play in the tennis at Wimbledon, but he's allowed to play in New York. Djokovic is not allowed to play in New York, but he's allowed to play in Wimbledon. Now, does the Tennis Association have anything to do with that? And if they do, it's a disgrace. So, and here's a man that has won. He's the best tennis player that ever lived. No question. He's won the most majors with Nadal right now, but he wasn't allowed to play. So it gives you an idea how good he is. And I really pulled for him. I was sitting there today, quite honestly, at the golf club watching. I was choking for him.
Howard, you got some viewers' questions, Howie?
I have viewers' questions, and I also want to hear about some of our connections between the Jewish community in South Africa and Gary. But before we get onto that, Gary, I want to ask a question because you've played with world leaders. Which presidents or prime ministers or royalty have you played with? And who's been the best golfer of all of them?
I played with every single, in the last 65 years, I met every president. I went to the White House. I played golf. I had lunch or had dinner. The best president that I've ever met in my lifetime, Donald Trump. Now, he's not a diplomat at all. And I hear people, they hate him. I said, have you met him? No. I said, how can you hate somebody and you've never met them? I play golf with him probably every 3 weeks when I'm in America. The way he looks after his staff, the way he looks after the greenkeeper, the lady waitress, so courteous to her. All my guests that come there from Rolex and Berenberg and all the companies I work for, he lets them sit at the presidential table. He signs all their hats. I've been around all of them. Clinton was the other one who was very warm. Now, they're different political views. The one's a Democrat, the one's a Republican, as we know. But Clinton was so warm and so nice to people. And that's what impresses me, how people treat people. And Donald Trump, if you look at the good things that he did, everybody talks about the bad things. Gasoline was $2 a gallon. Now it's 5 and 7. He stood up to China. He stood up to Iran. He stood up to all these countries, North Korea. He had the economy, the best it's been for ages. He had the strongest army, which America needs because they want to clobber America. There's no question about it. What he did, if you go through all the things, the principles. Now, he's not a diplomat, and he doesn't profess to be a diplomat. But if you look at all the principles and the results, that to me is what counts as a great president. And let me tell you, there's never been a president that comes within 10 shots of him. He's a 4 handicap. This guy can really play, really play.
Who else could play?
None.
How was
None
Eisenhower?
of them.
So who
None could really play.
Who was the first American president you played with?
The first American president I met was Reagan. And then I met Jimmy Carter, who unfortunately was a wonderful man, but not a great president, as we know.
Was he a golfer?
The Bush, no, not that I know of. Now, the Bushes were, the old man Bush was a thorough, I loved Mr. Bush and Mrs. Bush. They were darling people. And then his son played golf. Obama plays. I met Obama. Funny enough, I went to the center that was, that the people flew the airplane into, and they rebuilt it, and they had a luncheon, and I was going to have lunch with President Bush and President, Bush, Clinton, and Obama. So, but as I got out of the elevator, now you're up at 100 and something floor. As I got out of there, I walked to the window, and I stood there and I imagined those planes, which those people had to suffer with, coming at you, jumping from that height or burning. And I just thought, this is not real. I mean, the ladies and the people were jumping from that height. They looked down there and the people looked like ants. It was so high. And I went into lunch, and the first thing Obama said to me, he saw me do a back somersault off a boat in Greece. He says, I can't believe that a man of 82 can do a backflip off a boat. He was so interested in fitness. Obama was the greatest orator America's ever had as a president. He's the greatest orator. And loves his sports. He loved basketball and he loved golf. But all the presidents are really impressive people. You don't become president unless you've got some great value.
So, Gary, what is it like being Gary Player? Let us say you arrive in the UK. Does King Charles want to meet you? Do people stop you on the street if you go to Asia? What is it like to walk down the street in Japan if you're Gary Player?
Now, remember what I said to you. Now, I've got to be repetitive. I said, when I answer questions and you answer them, please don't think I'm boasting. I've got to answer the question in the truthful manner. I'm not a phony. Do you know there's not a man? Now, listen to what I'm saying. Out of 8 billion people that gets the love I get. I go to China, blah, 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 blah. I go to Japanese, konnichiwa, konnichiwa, golfaski desu ka. I go to America, I go to a supermarket, I go, the black people in South Africa hug me, the colored people. Wherever I go, every day, today I signed 50 golf autographs at the golf club. People from England, all over the world coming up, can I have your photo taken? I love people. I love them. So many of these celebrities and golf pros, they don't want to be surrounded by them. I'm like a magnet. I go to them because I love them. And I tell you, the love I get, and there's not a night I go to bed I don't say thank you. I get very tearful. I'm very much a crybaby off the golf course. And I mean, it's just, the greatest word bestowed upon the human being, the almighty weapon is love. And man, I'm inundated with it every single day, whether it's the waiter, the lady at the table this morning, a black lady comes. She says, hello, handsome. She says, how are you? She says, my father loved you. I mean, it's just something phenomenal.
Howard, I'm going to step in here, Howie.
Yeah,
ask
sure.
another question, a popular question for Mr. Player. First of all, I have to ask you this question because the world of golf seems to be at war at the moment with Live Golf and the PGA Tour and the European Tour. What's your view, Mr. Player, on what's going on in golf at the moment?
I've said my piece about the Live Tour. I'm not going to speak about it again, but the players that really believed in their hearts they couldn't win anymore have gone to join the Live Tour, and I don't blame them at all. Take the money. The PGA Tour is the tour. You've got 54 holes with the Live Tour. There's no cut. There's team events that I've never met anybody that knows about. I wouldn't have the team event if I was them. I would make it 72 holes, and I'd make it a real tour to compete. I don't blame the guys for running and taking the money. The thing that upsets me about the Live Tour and the PGA Tour, it's become a war.
Yeah.
And I am so anti-war, as I said earlier. If only the world would not be inventing bombs and cannons and guns and nuclear, we could all put our resources in the world together. There wouldn't be a poor person on the planet. It would be the ideal planet. That would be God's kingdom. So I don't like to see the war that's going on. And Greg Norman, who I like, I've got on very well with him, but he's had a
fight for a while.
Yeah, he's had a personal vendetta, basically, against the PGA Tour for a long time. And he has his reasons, but you can't bring that to the fore now. So the only thing that disturbs me is become a war, and I hate to see that because there's room for everybody.
And that currently now, for instance, South Africa, we don't have a dog in the fight. We have a relationship with the European Tour and all 5 federations in the world outside of ourselves. But I think that there'll become a time, and as Martin Slumbers said from the RNA, that it's very hard to turn down billions and billions of dollars being put into the game. And over time, hopefully in the not too distant future, that Live and the PGA Tour and the European Tour and the other tours around the world will get in a room and try and iron something out that the game can benefit from the money. That you won't just have a select few that be standing on their wallets. Be nice and talk. But I think that's what's got to happen. People have just got to get in the room and talk to each other.
But don't forget, there's an awful lot of money on the regular tour as well, and pension schemes. So it's not a lack of money anywhere. It's a matter of, I don't know what the conclusion will be in the end, but I just hate to see confrontation because, you know, at my age now, at 87, I look back on my life and nothing is as serious as I thought it was. So there's, you know, there's always room to get together. I don't know what's going to happen, but at this stage, it's war. And it's not likely at the moment. There's no thinking of getting together. But time is the greatest veterinarian of all.
And Mr.
Gary,
Player,
sorry, Gary, I want to talk about your relationship with the Jewish community in South Africa. Tell us stories of the people you met, the people from school, the people from Kalani. We'd love to hear about that relationship.
Saul's at school with you?
No, Saul wasn't at school with me. But
In
King Edward's. I was at King Edward's. I don't know where Saul went to school. I thought it was Marist Brothers. I'm not sure.
I think he went to Athlone.
Did he go to Athlone? I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah. But even at school, I'll never forget Ralph Hoffman. I was a young boy. We played against St. John's, our big enemies at that time. And we went and they made 212 all out. And I went in and we were 66 for 6. And Ralph Hoffman and I passed their score. And that was my first introduction from the Jewish guys in my class. There were 40% Jewish guys and 40% other religions. And then I met the Lubner brothers, Ronnie and Bertie, and I met all the Jewish members of Kalani and Houghton. I mean, it was just a time of my life. And when I went overseas, Kalani got together in those days because I had no money. My father had no money. The exact figure was £125 for an air ticket to England and back. And they gave me this ticket at a dinner. And I mean, it was like giving me the world. Can you imagine? My dream was to go overseas to Europe and play. And here they did this. And they were so kind to me. I mean, free food, free boarding. You know, I mean, it was just a wonderful time in my life. And, you know, I love all nations. But I love Israel because Israel, they're so clever. They took a lousy piece of ground in the desert and look what they've developed. Look at the technology. Look at them, how brilliant they are in, you know, economics. Look at them with warfare, the things they discover. They are a brilliant nation. I just wish, and I'll tell you, that's another thing. Think about what Donald Trump did in the Middle East. Think about what he did. The first embassy to be opened up by him. All the presidents told me they were going to do it. Never was done. He went to Saudi Arabia. He armed them. We had a plane. I never thought I'd ever see an airplane, an LL plane land in an Arab country in my life. Look at the things that have been done. The Jews have been like other nations, and every nation has got something that's good. But the Jews have been a very heroic and brilliant nation. But everybody has faults. And, you know, you could criticize them for that. You could criticize them for that. Today, with the media being what it is, you know, whatever you say, if you say you believe in Jesus Christ, there are 5,000 people that come back want to criticize you. But if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. But we live in a world now, this media, this fake media, where people don't tell the truth anymore. Look what the movie industry has done to the young people's language. Can you go to a movie today without this terrible F word in every single sentence? How do I watch a movie of 22 grandchildren? Can I sit with my grandchildren and watch a movie today unless I'm watching Donald Duck? No. So we live in a very strange world now.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. President Nate about women's golf. There got a lot of women watching, and South Africa's last major winner was a woman, and that's Ashley Buhan, and she won the Open Championship. I know Sally Little was a great golfer back in your day, Mr. Player, the great Sally Little. What did it mean to you to see Ashley Buhan winning the Open Championship? And what your thoughts on women golf and how it's growing, the world of women's golf?
So for us, we started 5 or 6 years ago with the Sunshine Ladies Tour. We've had some magnificent people that have been involved in it. We've had Investec being the principal sponsor, the late Sam Hackner, Robin Maggan, people like that pushing it. It's continued now with Farney and Richard Wainwright. So we've grown from nothing to about 9 tournaments. We have 2 co-sanctioned events with the European Ladies Tour now. We have a major winner. We have a lot of young girls coming through the South African Golf Development and Golf RSA. It's another thing that Mr. Rupert has done, creating the squads for the boys and the girls. So I think that golf is in like a really healthy position. Ladies golf, you'll see there's 2 young girls that just turned pro now that have come out of the amateur ranks that are really good. We've got a bunch of kids that are now at college in America that will excel and come through. So I think the ladies golf with Standard Bank getting involved now also, the 2 banks competing against each other, Investec with the South African, Investec South African Ladies Open, Joburg Open, someone like Bongi Makaba, who's invested the last 12 or 13 years in the Joburg Open as a Sunshine Tour co-sanctioned event with Europe. She's done the same now for the girls. The Joburg Open is also a co-sanctioned tournament with the LET. So I think that it might have taken us a really long time to get a major winner from the days of Sally, Sally turned pro in 1970. So, I mean, just think about it. It's taken more than 50 years we've had a lot of girls turn pro, but for us to get a major winner, even if it's taken so long, just shows you that the game is growing, and it's fantastic for golf clubs to now allow ladies to play on a Saturday and to play on a Sunday and to play any day they like. I went, actually this morning, I went to have breakfast at the Metropolitan Golf Day, and the guard at the gate didn't want to let me in because he said this Sunday is Ladies' Day. I said, I'll just go for breakfast.
Yeah.
He said, you can go in. So, I mean, things have changed, and I think there's a real growth period for young South African girls to start playing, and I'm sure we'll get many more major winners, hopefully out of the girls and the boys.
You've got people that are prepared to sponsor. Dave King sponsored so many black golfers in this country. Larry Nestad has sponsored. We got people that are prepared, individuals that are prepared to do things. And you look at you talk about a big change in golf. Even the Masters golf tournament, ranked, in my opinion, the 4th biggest tournament in the world today. They never had blacks play in their tournament. They never had ladies as a member not long ago. So, I've seen massive changes. There were many clubs that never let Jews play. Can you believe it? I mean, it's just frightening to think the human being has been a wild animal, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And sometimes the demonstrations are a good thing.
I played with him at Augusta.
Yeah.
But not off those real things. We played off those ones in front.
Gary, I want to talk about other members of your family. Your brother Ian Player is probably one of the greatest conservationists that ever lived. In fact, the rhinos may be extinct today if not for your brother. Can you tell us a little about him and his contribution to wildlife and conservation in South Africa?
Well, he went to the Second World War from St. John's College in Johannesburg. And the thing is that he comes back now, and, after war, we know what war does to people. In America, there are 20 soldiers a day that commit suicide. It's terrible. And I've never felt there's been enough done for the American soldiers. I think that should be, any man who comes back for serving his country should have a house and given 100,000 in his bank, in my opinion. But anyway, you looked at my brother. He then goes to war, comes back, he tries 17 different jobs. His mind's a bit of a mix-up, but he ends up being, as good a conservationist as the world's ever had. Maybe the best, because he was the most well-read of anybody. And he went around the world helping so many presidents around the world with the country, with their problems that they had. And he was so brilliant. And what a brother. I adored my brother. And he taught me, we went for a mile run when I was a young boy. I can't remember the age, but I would say around about 15. And I got 3/4 away and I said, I can't go on. I'm exhausted. And I'll never forget, he put the sand, there was sand there, and he put down there, write down can't. And I wrote in the sand, C-A-N-T. And he came and he rubbed out the T. Can. And he said, get up. And he kicked me in the butt. And I ran. And that was a good message to make me think that 2 minutes ago, I said, I can't. And now I can. So the mind is the secret. Don't tell me what a beautiful swing the man's got. Don't tell me how far. I'm sick and tired of hearing about how far somebody hits the ball. That's not wins golf tournaments. What wins golf tournaments is the mind and how good you can putt. Tiger Woods was a terrible driver of the ball. Phil Mickelson was a terrible driver of the ball, and they were 1 and 2 in the world because they had it and they knew what the short game was. And that short game and the mind is what wins golf tournaments, not long hitting. We got guys playing out tour right now that are prodigious hitters. I don't see them winning.
So, Gary, no matter what, sorry, Nate.
So, I think you've got an opportunity to ask Gary about some of the guys that he's played with, so he spent a lot of time with Howard Sackstein. They went and played and won the Canada Cup.
Yes.
Won the World Cup. He invited Simon Hobday to come and play in a tournament with him.
It's a partnership.
They were partners.
Yeah.
Just give us one Hobday. Especially nice for the public.
Well, Simon Hobday, he was a character. And he says, I went in for a prostate operation. And he says, I'm lying there. And he says, as a young boy, I couldn't afford a private ward. And the young boy's lying next to me. And he's recovering from an anesthetic. And the nurse comes up and says, Simon, this guy's a golfer. When he sees you, he's going to be so excited. But you got to be patient because he stutters terribly. So Simon's reading. Eventually he sees the kid come out. And the kid looks at Simon, does a double take. He says, Simon Hobday, what are you doing here? He says, son, I'm here because I pee like you talk.
Mr. Blair, what about Lee Trevino?
Lee Trevino, second best golfer I've seen in my life from tee to green. Not necessarily the putter and the rest of the game, but he was an all-time great. He was a superstar. I think he won 6 majors and could really, really play wonderful and so colorful. I mean, this guy, he and Chichi Rodriguez, I don't know how you ever put a value on what they did for the senior tour and the regular tour. They were phenomenal with the people. And you don't see anybody like that today playing golf to that extent. Because today is big business. It's all money. They fly out of there with their jets. We went by Greyhound bus.
Gary, I want to get back, because people are asking the question. You very unfortunately lost your wife in 2021 after a very long marriage. It must have been enormously hard for you, but it must as well have been enormously difficult being married to someone who was traveling the world the entire time, winning tournaments the entire time, to be able to bring up a family, and also the distances that must have been like so prevalent in the marriage, physical distances.
Do you know it's impossible? It's impossible to describe the woman I was married to. I met her when I was in La Rochelle, a very poor suburb, and I stood on the wall and I looked over the wall and I saw this little girl and I said, what's your name? She says, Vivian. I said, mine's Gary. She says, do you play golf? I said, I'm starting. She says, my father's a pro. We'll pick you up on Saturday. We'll take you to the course. I got off the wall and I said to my brother, I've spoken to her for 40 seconds. I said to Christopher, I'm going to marry that girl. He said, what are you talking about? You married her for 40 seconds. Well, I did. And I tell you, what she did for me, and to travel with 6 children on her own on occasions, from South Africa to America on Pan Am Airways and Sabina, no beds, no earphones, no movies, sitting up, sleeping on the floor, stopping in places that were not exactly the most luxurious places, 40 hours to get to America. And what she did for me, she did everything. And I was blessed to meet a woman like that, because you can't become a world champion without an exceptional wife. You can get to a certain level, but you can't go beyond that. Palmer, And Nicholas had phenomenal wives, phenomenal. And yes, she dies. But you know the way I look at it, I said earlier in the show, life is the greatest gift bestowed upon man or woman. I'm still alive. I'm very grateful. I left the table. I was with her for 72 years. I had a feast. When you leave the table after a feast, you're satisfied. And my advice to people who have been married and getting old, get ready. One of you going to die first. It's God's laws. And get used to it and make a plan. Do I miss her? I cry and I have a tear in my eye at least once a week, at least, because my room's inundated with pictures of her. And my family all adored her. But we all got to go. And now I go on with life. I'm extremely happy. My business is doing extremely well. I'm getting so much love from people. My family are giving me tons of love. I've got 4 daughters. I hear from them every single day. My son Wayne today phoned me from America and was speaking to me. No, look, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Just ever think about people that really have problems. And this is what the world's got to do. Make a comparison of people that really have problems. One of my great dreams, Selwyn was very involved in it, the golf course at Soweto, which is a beautiful golf course. He wanted to see us. I built the first golf course in Soweto. I came back and designed it. Selwyn was instrumental. Larry Nestor, so many American PG. Again, you see, America's always a Samaritan. America came in and helped. We have this beautiful golf course. One of my dreams now, we gave a school in America $700,000 the other day. The 2 schools. We raised money for these kids. It's such a thrill to go there and change the lives. Now, my dream is to go to Soweto in South Africa, and I'm going to ask Selwyn to help me. I want to take people that don't have wheelchairs. We're going to have a day there. Selwyn's going to invite people. We're going to raise a lot of money, and we're going to take people out of Soweto that can't walk and don't have a wheelchair, and we're going to give them a good wheelchair to get around. That's my one next dream.
Howard, which people don't know, a lot of people don't know, is that Gary's late wife, Vivian, made 2 hole-in-ones on the same day at Wanderers Golf Club. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And the third one was on the lip. The third one had 1/4 of an inch for a 3. Can you imagine being married to a chick that does that?
So, gentlemen, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I'm going to ask our audience if there are questions that you want answered that we haven't done. But I know I have a few questions, Gary, that I still want to put to you. Number one, people associate you with Rabbit. Rabbit was your caddy for many, many years. I'd love you to talk about him for a moment or two. And the second thing after we've done that is to talk about physical fitness. There's a story that, in fact, to this day, you still sleep on the floor. Is that legend or not? But let's start with Rabbit. Tell us about Rabbit.
Rabbit was an African American. He was 6'3". He was exactly like Muhammad Ali. He was so full of fun and came. He'd stop at the toll booth and he'd see this beautiful black lady. He says, "Hey, listen here, my little baby. If you want my time, I'm in room 109. I mean, he always had something to say to the beautiful chicks. And we had a repertoire going on when we played golf. I'd get in the bunker and he'd say, we set it up, of course, and you'd have, 300 people walking around when I'm in the bunker. He says, if you hold one of these, laddie, he says, I'll caddy for nothing. Well, I'd be there and I'd go and I'd hit and I'd get them close and the people go, ooh, oh. He says, you white people, you're all the same. He says, you're brothers, you all stick together. He says, man, I need the money and you pulling for a millionaire. What sort of people are you? But we traveled the world together. We went everywhere. We were at the British Open or the Open, and I said to him, Rabbit, you got to wear that badge, man. Well, he got friendly with everybody. The police, he'd always get to the course 2 hours before me, meet everybody there. And this one little guy comes up to him, this English guy, and says, hey, Darky, what are you doing here, mate? He says, I've come to caddy. And he never got militant. He never got upset. He was the perfect man to understand the time and the place that he was in. And I said to him, Rabbit, you got to wear a badge of security on your label here to get in the gates. He says, laddie, Don't worry about me, man. He says, I stick out like a fly in buttermilk. I get in everywhere. And I mean, laddie, he always called me laddie. And he was always laughing. And that's what I needed, because when I played golf, man, off the golf course, I was calm. But when I got on that golf course, it was like a light being switched on with focus, like Tiger, like all the guys. And he was just a marvelous guy to travel around the world. He came out here, he went into Soweto with a big white suit on. All the black women wanted to marry him with his accent. He said, no, I've got to get home to mama, man. And he went to Swaziland. The king's daughter at that stage wanted to marry him. I said, Rabbit, marry her, man. I'll be caring for you. He said, he's not going to get home to mama, man. And you know, we sponsored his son to Princeton University, was a straight A student. And I did it on a no loan basis. I gave him the money, and his son, as a caddy, turned out to be a straight A student. So I could tell you 100 stories of him. He was just a marvelous guy, a marvelous guy.
So Gary, talk to us about physical fitness. Is it true that you sleep on the floor? If so, why? And how do you stay fit? What do you do? And Nate, do you have
I'm going to excuse myself.
I'm holding on to Selwyn. He wants to leave the table.
I mean, if you've listened to this for as long as I have, I mean, it's just not normal.
No, but Nate, maybe
to punch him now.
he's going to maybe teach you how to do a press up in another moment.
He's going to ask me to. I promise you, he's going to ask me to punch him in the stomach.
All right. Yesterday, I went to the gym. I did 200 sit-ups. I pushed 300 pounds with my legs on the leg press. I ran the treadmill at max. Max. Now, I don't know if you know what a treadmill is at max. That is fast. I did my push-ups. I did every single exercise with the weights, the stretching, and everything. And that's why I can still play golf and shoot par, because I've kept in shape, whereas Palmer, at my age, couldn't break 100. Poor Nicholas at the moment can't play golf. He got overweight, and I used to beg him. To lose weight. You see, to lose weight is a tough thing. But you got to understand one thing. If you're overweight, your body works at overtime. Anything that works overtime stops. So 1 out of every 2 men are getting cancer now. Heart attacks are number 1. They're prevalent. So you have the choice. I don't nag people. You have the choice. But all I'm saying, don't let your children get overweight. Diabetes, they talk about COVID. COVID's about 4th or 5th on the list. Heart attacks, number 1. Cancer, number 2. Diabetes is today the pandemic is diabetes. But there's not the money in it that all these firms can make from the injections and the boosters and the boosters and the boosters. So watch the weight with the children.
So do you sleep on the floor, and after that, can Nate punch you?
Well, actually, I know that yesterday, I think he won in that 5th or the 7th race at Kenilworth on Met Day, or Hollywood Bets Met Day, that Gary's syndicate won R1 million for coming second. I don't think in the first 25 years of his career, he won R1 million. So, I mean, look at this. He actually earned more yesterday than he earned in 20 years. Can you imagine that?
So, Gary, talk to us about your horses, your love for horses.
Well, I have 2 passions at the moment, and that's golf. I play 5 times a week because it keeps my body moving. And I have horses of which I study genetics every day. Every day, I might have a day or so a week I don't. And I'm passionate. I don't know what I love more, horses or golf. I put them at a tie. And you've got to, as you get older, you've got to have friends that you meet and do things with. You've got to have a passion. You've got to have a hobby. You can't sit at home and feel sorry for yourself because nobody cares a damn about you. When you're laughing, the whole world laughs with you. When you're crying, nobody cries with you. So don't feel sorry for yourself. Get off your butt and do something.
So I'm running through questions that the audience have asked. And Barney, I'm going to ask you as well to look through the questions that the audience have asked so you can pose a question. But
my last question, Howard, is
yeah.
I don't know if a lot of people know, but Gary Player, besides being one of the greatest golfers of all time, has really become one of the greatest course designers of all time. And that's been a passion of his that I know. Gary, tell us a bit about your course design and some of your favorite golf courses around the world.
Well, we designed plus minus 140. The best golf course I've ever designed is in Fancourt called the Links. It's by far the best golf course in South Africa. There's not even one that's close to it as far as a championship is concerned. And that's what it's primarily designed for, a championship. We in South Africa have wonderful golf courses, wonderful climate. It's a paradise for people to visit the country. The exchange rate, 17 Rand for $1, 20 for a pound. I love designing because I was a farmer for 45 years of my life. So I understand the value of water, the value of soil, the value of bird life, etc., etc. I love designing golf courses because I'm trying to teach the people, as my brother did, who taught me so much about conservation. Water. The world's running out of water. Now, we are so dynamic as a human being, we'll find ways to make water. We've got desalination, which is costly. We can make it out of humidity. But at the moment, water is a massive problem. So when I design a golf course, I try and keep the costs as low as possible. So I love designing golf courses. I've designed them all over the world: China, Japan, America, Europe, South Africa. 140. I love doing it, but I always I try, unless the owner says, I want a championship golf course. I try and design a golf course that the members can play and enjoy because they're the heart of the game.
So Gary, someone has mentioned Mr. Crook. I think Alan Crook says, is it correct that you once scored a 59?
Yes, I did. It was the only time that anybody broke 60 in a national championship, and that was in Brazil. And you talk about luck. I've always said luck is the residue of design, but this was luck. I mean, I had to hold the worst greens I ever played on, ever. And I had to hold a 10-footer. At 15, I had to hold a 40-yard bunker shot and knocked it in the hole. At 17, I hold a 10-footer for a par. And I came to the last hole and all the gallery was sitting there, and I had a 30-foot putt I had to hold to break 60. He went right in the middle. So what a thrill it was. That's the barrier. That's the 4-minute barrier for athletes to break 60.
And what about, Rail wants to know, what about 7 birdies in a row in Cape Town?
Well, I was something more significant. In 1978, I was 7 shots behind Tom Watson in the field in the Masters. And I came back in 30 and shot 64 with a bogey and won. Eh? That's 1978, 42. So now we go the next week, and Ballesteros is 7 ahead of me down in California. I shoot 65 in a rainy, windy day, and I beat him. The next week, go to Houston, and you had this big redneck, Andy Bean, a dear friend of mine. He comes to me, he says, you little sawed-off South African runt, you're not going to beat me today. I said, of course I'm not, Andy. You got me by 6 shots. I shot 64 and beat him. And the next week, I lost the tournament by 1 shot. So when you're 7 behind, and people still don't realize this, you put the score on the board. Well, it happened just a few weeks ago with Rahm. He made 9 shots on Morikawa on the last day. 9 shots. So you're never beaten until the fat lady sings.
Professionals who made 7 in a row.
Oh, where did I do that? At Mowbray, was it?
Mowbray.
Yeah, Mowbray. Yeah, Mowbray.
Mowbray now.
So I have 2 questions left. The one is the future of South African golf, and it's, I think, both for Nate and for Gary. When is the next Gary Player coming out of the Soweto Country Club? What do we need to do to make sure that we continue to produce the greatest sports people in the world?
You see, golf gets more coverage for South Africa than any other sport. And our government will not recognize that because they like to classify it as a whitey sport, and it's not. We've got Selwyn is responsible, Johan Rupert, and a lot of people have put a lot into programs to help young black golfers. We had a guy called James Compter, who Tiger thought was really good, and I thought he was really, well, he was, but he blew it. He couldn't live with the lifestyle that was necessary. My dream is to find us a Tiger Woods in South Africa, and please believe me, our black young kids are so athletic that we can get it. But we've got to, once they get the talent, we've got to have somebody to help them with the mind. That's the big thing. It's not, the swing is not the thing, you know, and so we've got the talent. South Africa's golf future, phenomenal. We haven't had a major champion for 10 years, which perturbs me. We set our golf courses up in South African tournament too easy. There's not even the debate on that. Instead of setting them up tough, you go to Australia, they make them tough. You go to America, they make them tough. You go to England, they make them tough. We in our tournament, on our tours, are making the course too easy. And so really when our guys go overseas now, and they got these monumentally difficult golf courses, they're on a defense. Instead of making it tough here, you play in the Australian Open, they make it so tough at Royal Melbourne. We don't do that anymore. Golf has become an easy game. The greens are perfect. The fairways are perfect. The bunkers are machines. The ball goes 50 yards further. You got a metal head. You got lightweight shafts. We're going to gym. The ball is going a mile now. That's what we're going to do. And I spoke to the head of the USGA the other day, an African-American gentleman, a charming man. He says, we are going to cut the ball back for professional golf because the ball is going too far. And everybody thinks it's the human being, the ball and the clubs and everything are going, but now they're going to the gym as well. So we will cut the ball back, not for the average man. The average man must play golf and let him use what he likes. But the pro golf, we're going to see a change as sure as I'm sitting here.
Selwyn, are we putting enough
I think
resources into golf?
I think, you know, that the sort of legacy that Mr. Rupert and people like Larry and myself and great sponsors, we've built something over the last 55 or 60 years with players like Gary and Bobby Locke and Harold Henning and Ernie Els and Charles and
Nicky Price
and Louis and Trevor Immerman, and we've had all these major winners. My belief is that we've got the most unbelievable breeding ground for young players. And we've also got an amazing group of young people that are coming into the administration of sport. And I honestly believe that the people that are going to manage the sport going forward are going to be far better than we were over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I really have that belief because I can already see the kind of quality of people that have come into the game. And if you look at our amateur game, we've got a young guy there it's not quite 50 yet, Grant Hepburn, who runs the amateur golf RSA. And then we've got young Thomas Apt, who's just taken over, also in his mid-40s. And there's a whole bunch of new administrators coming out of all the different provinces. And there's plenty of money for the growth of the sport. And there's wonderful development structures that are teaching players. We have now over 65 young players of color in our Papua Golden Development Club squad. That was the Gary Player class the year before. So now it's the Papua class. So we're actually building a very nice base of really good young players, really good administrators. And, you know, you could come to the Sunshine to our offices some 3-4 years ago and there'd be 2 or 3 of us sitting in the office because we were busy. Everybody was on the road. And now, fortunately, we've been able to expand our staff and transfer the skills to so many different people across all the provinces in South Africa. And just to give you an idea, that this year we lost 3 of our top young administrators. One went to the ladies' tour, they stole her. Another one went to the US tour because they stole him. And the Australians just stole our head of membership to run the Australian membership. So we must be doing something right in this country. And we might have only had a dozen major winners come out of this country, excluding how many times they each won it. You know, Gary won
23 majors, South
23
Africa
major,
won. 23.
So
More than any country in the world other than America.
Don't forget Ashley Buhan, who won last year. She won a
that's
major.
right. So we've had
We forgot about Ashley, and she's married to a Jewish man, actually, Dave Buhan.
That's fine. So I really think that our golf from a grassroots level is going to grow. I think from an administration point of view, I really believe that the people that whatever we've done, the next generation of people are going to be far better equipped than us. And I just know that the game's going to grow. And fortunately, we've got a lot of great people who invest a lot of money in golf, and for what Gary's done for the game, it makes it easy for us to go out and sell it. And I've been around him since I'm about 16 years old, so I know exactly. You know, I didn't realize how short he was when I was 16 and he came to me.
You continued to grow. Gary didn't.
Exactly. So I think the golf's in a good space.
So as we wind down, I'm going to ask everyone watching us tonight just to leave Nate and Gary a message on Zoom or YouTube or Facebook. It would be just lovely to hear from everyone and get some comments from everyone. So please, if I can ask you just to leave a final message on. But Gary, I want to maybe end with a question, a double-edged question. It's been 87 remarkable years. The two parts of the double-edged question is, are there any regrets in the past 87 years? And what's next for Gary Player?
It's very easy to answer. I've been a very proud South African. I adore this country and its people. I've traveled more miles than any human being that's ever lived. I've appeared in front of more people on television and live than any other South African by a mile. This country has meant so much to me. I was offered equivalent of $45 million to live in America and a $5 million home in Nashville, Tennessee. I turned it all down. So the regret I had that when I got the Medal of Freedom for serving my country, which I loved, and I'm a son of God, so I don't expect people to make a fuss of me. I'm just another person. But I would have thought when I got the Medal of Freedom, which the average South African has no idea how I battled for freedom in my life, sponsoring hospitals, golfers overseas, building churches, etc., etc., etc. All I would have expected my government to just say, we're proud of you. I've got messages from everywhere and governments around the world, and my own government never even said, well done. Now that was my one regret. Other than that, I have no regrets, but don't expect the praise of man. Expect the praise of the Lord. That's important. So for me, I'm extremely happy. I've had a wonderful life. I've never thought I lie in bed and I say, how did I win all these tournaments? I mean, it's just a blessing. I'm so grateful. I'm so happy for everything. Exactly. There's no way a man could be happier than I wake up every day and that song, Be Happy, Man. You got the trouble, you make it double.
So what's next for Gary Player?
He's going to smoke the cigar later.
In the way Bill Clinton smoked cigars.
I'll tell you what's next. I'd like to make a documentary, and we're talking to people where I can ride a horse on the beach. I can push 300 pounds on my legs, run the treadmill. I can do sit-ups. I can play golf. I can swim fast. I can run fast. And just say, look what this man could do at 87. Don't think you're old, because I hear people say you're getting old when you're 60. Just to give them a sample or an example of what you can do if you look after your body. You know what's going to happen?
Larry says what's next for you is you have to win a horse race.
Yes.
There's a man on the planet right now that's going to live to 150 on this planet. You're going to see people, you're going to see things that we never dreamt of. They're going to have molecules in the needle's eye that'll go through your brain, and the molecules will produce oxygen. We haven't even scratched the surface what's going to happen on this planet. The Cleveland Clinic told me if I can live another 7 years without any real damage to my body, they guarantee to give me another 10 years of life. We're in our infancy with everything.
No guarantees in life. But Gary, as the final thing before I thank everyone, I just want to know that feeling when you won your first Masters. When you raised the trophy, was that the moment you knew you had made it? And what did it feel like?
No, I only ranked the Masters 4th. The greatest tournament in the world is by far the British Open. That's when I won that as the youngest man to ever win it. That was my biggest joy. And then when I won the US Open, which is the second most important tournament in the world, to win the Grand Slam and beat Nicklaus and Palmer and all the guys, that was a big moment. And then the PGA is third, and then the Masters, to win the Masters and meet Bobby Jones, this great gentleman, and to meet President Eisenhower, who I just adored. The Masters is the best run tournament in the world, but they got some very strange rules and ideas.
Gentlemen, Barney Girnun, you are the great encyclopedia of sport in South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Howie, what a great pleasure. And also a big thank you to Larry Nestat, who's Gary's great mate, and he made this possible as well. So a big thank you to Larry as well, and to Nate. Loved having Nate here with us as well. What a legend. Gary, I'll see you soon.
We've been mates a long time. I just want to be able to play him once off the shoulder. You know?
I just want to end with the words, because Mark Lubner sent a message in, and he said when his late father Bertie Lubner would speak of Gary Player, he would say there were two words that were the most meaningful that applied to you, Gary, and that was honesty and sincerity. And I think this evening you have given us absolutely from the heart. You've addressed issues that are sometimes hard and difficult for people to hear, but you have been nothing but a great ambassador and an inspiration for all South Africans. So thank you so much. You will see, I will forward you all the comments that people have left tonight, and there are hundreds and hundreds of comments of people who feel closest to you because they've seen you swimming in Plet, or they played a round of golf with you, or they've met you in the street. But you have been the most approachable ambassador we've ever had for South Africa. And truly, probably, we said at the beginning of this, probably only Madiba rates as the most recognizable South African above you, but you have been a great ambassador for all of us. Gary, Selwyn, Barney, thank you so much for joining us this evening. So appreciate it. And just a reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and like. That allows us to communicate with you so much easier. And if you would like to join one of our WhatsApp groups, we're going to put on the screen now. You can just either use your camera and scan and join one of our WhatsApp groups and be notified about our future webinars. We've got some amazing webinars planned ahead for all of you. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Gary, thank you so much. Why do they call you the Black Knight as you leave?
Well, my father, who is a miner and a very poor man, said to me when I told him I was going to be a world champion, he said, you've got to have a brand. I had no idea what he was talking about. I get to America. They had a show called Have Gun Will Travel, a man dressed in black. He gave people that were struggling a card and said, call me if you have a problem. I loved that. So I thought, I'm from Black Africa. I'm going to wear black and I'm going to help people. So it was just a natural combination.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Good night, everyone. Thank you all.